The flagging off ceremony, Meru County Deputy Governor Titus Ntuchiu said the initiative is to motivate more children to join school. He said that the project will cost the county 53 million Kenya shillings. The nursery school children will receive milk twice a week, that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the first 6 months. The county aims to increase the frequency to 5 times a week. Meru Dairy CEO Kenneth Kitonga said that this initiative meant more business to them and more money to the farmers. Meanwhile, a new mobile application has been launched in Mombasa County that is aimed at boosting farm yields across the country. Referred to as Ulima, this mobile platform is the first of its kind in Africa, and it provides farmers across the continent with a toolset, information libraries, databases, and access to the latest market information. Ulima CEO Sunesh Bula said that they have chosen Kenya as the launching ground because of perpetual food shortages. The app operators have been in various parts of the country, creating awareness to farmers and agro dealers on how to use it in disease surveillance and farming technology.
CEO and co-founder.
We provide information to the farmers on 9 different types of crops and 5 different types of livestock. The information is free for anyone to use. It's available on all smartphones from the Play stores or app stores, as well as on USSD short code 693. So what we're hoping to do is improve the efficiency and yields of our farmers with a little bit more access to information and improvement of their farming practices. We can hopefully increase our yields and productivity. Yes, so we are launching the app in Kenya. We've been traveling all over the country, showing various agro dealers and farmers the application, how to use it. It's a very easy to use application with lots of information libraries on, you know, right from pre-planting to post-harvest. You've got disease and pest identification. So we're hoping to just improve every single aspect of that farming process.
An Eldoret businessman accused of threatening to kill Jubilee Party Secretary General Raphael Tuju will remain in police custody until Friday, pending the conclusion of this probe. Nakuru Senior Principal Magistrate Liz Gisheha granted the prosecution's request to suspend issuing this bond until the investigations are concluded. The suspect denied the charge emanating from messages he sent last Friday. According to the charge sheet, he allegedly sent a message to Tuju which read, and I quote, "Do not set your foot in your motherland. In case you do, you should carry an extra coffin," end quote. The court will rule on the bond application on Friday. Meanwhile, Baringo Senator Gideon Moi says he is confident that President Uhuru Kenyatta will support him during the 2022 presidential elections. Gideon, who is also KANU chairman, said he was in good terms with President Kenyatta, who formerly belonged to the party. In an apparent reference to President Kenyatta's journey to the helm, the senator said that Kenyatta knows what he will do when that time comes. The senator has been engaged in a supremacy battle with Deputy President William Ruto in the scramble for the leadership of the vote-rich Rift Valley.
Tuko na bwanadiva hao wote na nyinyi pia. Ile tu ningependa nieleze kwa watu wa KANU na members. Mimi kama kiongozi wenu niko na amani na Mheshimiwa Uhuru Kenyatta. So yale ambayo umesikia tupatie nafasi. Tupatie nini? Nafasi. Unajua mambo mengi na msumbua sasa. Tupatie nafasi, tuunge mkono, tumsaidie. Na niko na amani na yeye, najua bila atafanya.
Well, two quick updates from the court before we get into today's interview. Nicholas Mutuku, the Deputy Director of Public Prosecution, says that self-declared NRM General Miguna, who has been charged in a Kajiado court, and of course he said this at the Milimani courts where people expected that he would be taken to. He tells the Nairobi court that there is no need to hold the Inspector General of Police, Boynet, and the Director of Criminal Investigation, Head Kinoti, in contempt because they have sent representatives to the courts in their place. Those are senior representatives because they are busy attending a security conference. Those are some of the pictures that we are bringing to you now. The DPP says Miguna has been charged in a Kajiado court this morning and tells this same court that there is no need to hold the Inspector General and the Director of Criminal Investigation. In another matter, in court as well, the legal team for the Raw Media Services and Africa Digital Networks are back in court today. Today's matter regarding compensation, even as the government continues to defy two court orders requiring it to reinstate the transmission of its two TV stations. Early or late last week, lawyer Gibson Kamau Kuria argued that the government has greatly damaged this broadcasting business and caused it to breach contracts entered into with third parties for advertising goods. In addition, the media house, which operates Citizen TV and Inoro TV, notes that the government has put into jeopardy not only the media house, but of course investments that's worth millions of shillings, but also jobs of its 1,000 employees. This also happening at the Milimani Law Court. Elsewhere, today is the International Day of Zero Tolerance for Female Genital Mutilation, a United Nations-sponsored annual awareness day that takes place on the 6th of February as part of the UN's efforts to eradicate female genital mutilation. It was first introduced in 2003, and it is part of a combined effort by the UN to meet one of its Sustainable Development Goals, which is the elimination of FGM, a key target under Goal 5. Joining me in studio to talk a little bit about this are my guests, Ismail Omar, Program Officer, the Girl Generation, in the center of the panel there, Tony Mwebia at the far right, a social worker, an activist, and right here next to me is Brenda Dora, who is an advocate and the legal officer, the East African Center for Human Rights. Lady and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Let me start with you, Tony. Tony, you're a familiar face. You've been here before. Talk to us a little bit about how Kenya is celebrating this International Day of Zero Tolerance.
Well, today we will be marking the day at the Kenya Institute, KICD in Gara, whereby we're having a huge conference, bringing together over 400 delegates from all over the country. Here they will be able to share the achievements that have been achieved so far in the fight against FGM in Kenya. Remember, back in 1998, Kenya was at 38% prevalence of FGM, but right now we are at 21%. This calls for a celebration. This calls for people to come together, share their experiences, share what is happening on the ground, what is working in the fight against FGM, and the way forward, and how we can work together in making sure that the grassroots people and the people, the other organizations, the donors and everyone, the government can come together and ensure that the fight against FGM is a unanimous thing, and together we can be able to end FGM by 2030.
Okay, it's good to hear you talking about a celebration, but I want to come to Ismail now. Sometimes when people celebrate, it doesn't always mean that the problem is fully taken care of. Let's talk a little bit about that. What more needs to be done to deal with FGM once and for all? I know that I believe the United Nations has set a goal, I think by 2030, to have complete eradication. Let's talk a bit about what will need to be done for that to actually happen.
So apparently the ending FGM is within the Sustainable Development Goals. Goal 5, gender equality. Target 5.3 talks about elimination of harmful cultural practices, talking about female genital mutilation and ending child marriage. So I think moving forward, for us to end FGM, we need to build bridges. That is working with all partners who are involved in terms of communities, ensuring that we do have culturally led programs, because the problem we are having is that most of the programs are not cultural sensitive to communities. We go to a community and tell them your culture is backward, is retrogressive. So I think it's moving beyond that and applying social change communication and do no harm principles that tend to bring everybody on board in a way that is not judgmental. So moving forward is working closely with government, because enforcement of policy is key, because it has been a problem. And of course, looking at even engaging men. Right now, you see, even in this panel, we have two men who are really championing
in total
for this.
3.
Yeah, exactly. so to speak, men or engaging men is something that is working. Of course, working closely with religious leaders, traditional leaders, gatekeepers is also something that is fundamental. But most importantly, is ensuring that framing the end FGM movement in a human rights perspective, ensuring that also we understand the true effects of FGM, because there are short-term consequences and there are long-term consequences. When you cut a girl, it means that you cut thousands of nerves. So these nerves are very fundamental in the body of. So we need to respect the bodily integrity the bodily autonomy of our girls and women across the world.
Okay, I've never seen it put that way. I think you've put your point across very clearly. Brenda, let me come to you as an advocate. FGM outlawed in 2001, second set of laws passed, I believe, in 2011 to make it illegal to promote or to facilitate female circumcision, and of course stiffen penalties. Are you satisfied that the law is fully aiding in the fight against FGM? Do you wish to see more? But also, it's one thing to have the law, it's another thing to enforce it. Let's talk a bit about those issues.
I'd say that yes, we have made a lot of gains in terms of legislation. We do have legislation that is fully aiding the fight or the campaign. We have moved from the actual fight, we're now in a campaign against FGM. And I believe that the law as it is sufficient. A little bit of tweaking here and there, but as is, it is sufficient. What I'd want to say is that with the establishment of the Anti-FGM Board, we have seen the Anti-FGM Board partnering not only with the Directorate of Public Prosecution, but also with other partners to ensure that we actually aid the implementation of the legislation fully, because then, considering the dynamics of FGM and communities that practice it, we find that with the advent of the law and the stricter penalties there too, you find that communities are becoming more innovative and the practice is even going underground. And by virtue of the fact that the practice is going underground, we have to actually ensure that we, galvanize multi-sectoral approach to ensure that in as much as we have the law, implementation is key, and for us to be able to ensure that the campaign against FGM is fully not only reached, but also moved to a point where we are saying we have fully eradicated FGM in Kenya. We really need to actually galvanize all efforts. And I think that is being done. The law is sufficient. Implementation, a little bit of challenges here and there, but I believe that all the partners implementing around strategies and innovations around FGM are actually doing a bit more, and we're determined to even do much more to ensure that we actually aid the act to reach its fullest potential.
Okay.
Yes.
Tony, it's about using every approach. You use digital quite a bit. Talk to us a little bit about what you've been trying to do to rally Kenyans around this day to get the message out that, listen, we need to do something as a society, and especially men, because that is one approach you have taken quite specifically.
Kenyans are quite ahead when it comes to use of digital media and social media, and especially the youths themselves. I think we are ranked number 3 in Africa. So use of social media is very key. It's a new approach of ending FGM, whereby we are able to share the messages out there to the youths and everyone who is online, and we are able to engage them and spark conversations online. Then also, those who came before us saw FGM mainly as a women issue, as a issue to do with women. But right now, it's the high time that we realize that ending FGM is not women's issue. It's everyone's business. Men are very key, because if you look at all the reasons for FGM, most of them, they point to increasing marriageability of the girls. And who are the potential husbands to these girls? They are the men. So if we are not able to sensitize them and ensure that they get the reasons as to why we are telling them FGM is not good, then we are not going to end FGM by 2030. So we need really to make sure that everyone comes on board, the men, the fathers, because FGM affects our sisters, it affects our cousins, it affects our wives. So it's the high time that everyone came on board. Remember, most of the key policymakers are men. When you go to the church, it's men. When you go to the parliament right now, it's men. Okay, so we need really to have the men on board to ensure that the message is driven home, and united we shall end FGM.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Ismail, he talks about using digital media, using new approaches to tackle FGM. But those who are pro-FGM also have come up with new strategies, new ways. For example, we are told that in some communities, girls are being circumcised during boys' ceremonies to camouflage that. We're also told that there's something, and I'm trying to actually look for the term because I had noted it down here, some sort of holiday FGM, vacation FGM, right? Yeah. So let's talk about now what sort of new approaches now need to come out, because you get the feeling that you innovate, they innovate, you innovate, they innovate. So those who are anti-FGM have to keep innovating if they're going to stay ahead. Let's talk a bit about that.
So apparently we have shifts in trends in terms of how FGM is being carried out right now. So one of the things is vacation cutting. So we find there are countries where like, for instance, Britain or the US, where they have very strict laws of FGM. So they bring their kids, especially people from the Somali or the Cushitic communities, they do bring their girls here to be cut. And also even just across Tanzania, we have probably the Kuria and the Maasai going to the other side of the border because probably the enforcement there is not very strict for the cut. So I think moving forward, we need to really have more regional laws so that we can have we can apply the same standards across the region. This year's international theme, it talks about ending FGM is a political decision. So the role of sub-regional and regional organizations. You're talking about the African Union, the regional economic communities, the East Africa community, in our case, ECOWAS in the West Africa. So it is high time that these institutions take this into consideration. Another issue is that FGM now is done in secrecy. There are no celebrations as it was before. So again, especially like in Kisii, where the prevalence now stands at around 84%, you see, this is to say...
we've heard of some communities where it's up to what, 94%?
94%. That is northeastern. So I think now it's just having strategies that work in terms of working closely with the communities. Once we get the trust of the communities and they understand this is a problem, they're able to come up with their own solution for this problem. But you cannot go to the community and tell them that this is what needs to be done. It has to come from the communities. And finally, maybe I also talk about the do no harm approach that we're using as a strategy.
Do no harm approach.
Do no harm approach.
Okay.
This is what imagery, what symbols, and what languages are we using when fighting FGM? Or when talking about FGM, for instance, calling FGM barbaric, even in the media, for instance. If you see somebody, for instance, talking about 3,000 girls have been cut in Marakwet, for instance. So you find that all that is sensational, and maybe it's not the fact. So we also need to really speak to what is happening on the ground, and also look at not using imagery or symbols or languages that can end up traumatizing survivors of FGM.
So you're actually telling, for example, the media, we're a voice for the people, to be careful in terms of the language.
Yes. Exactly.
So give me substitutes. Instead of using this word, what should I use instead? Please.
So for instance, instead of calling FGM barbaric,
okay,
just talk about, because female genital mutilation is real, but you don't have to use words like barbaric. Your culture is retrogressive. I can be sure that there are more civilized, cultural, sensitive language that we can use that is acceptable to these communities, rather than calling people's culture backward, or retrogressive.
Very
because, and then also using things like the images of a razor, for instance, bleeding, or showing images or video clips of girls being cut. I think to some extent, these are the kind of strategies we don't need to use anymore unless they are demanded. For instance, in cases when you're dealing with men only and they really want to see what is happening, then those are the only points that you could be able to show those graphic images.
Yes.
But again, we really, as the Girl Generation, we are a social change communication program. We really work with communities, with organizations to really ensure that the do no harm approach is applied.
Very interesting. You want to weigh in on that as well?
I think Ismail has been able to sum it up. But what I want to say is that we really need to be a bit more sensitive, because then you're dealing with victims and survivors who, by virtue of the fact that most of them were cut and it's a horrific practice or exercise, if then we keep on talking about it and saying it's harmful, it's barbaric, we take them back to that actual day and end up re-victimizing them. So even in our campaign, we're really, really advocating for a do no harm strategy, because we always have to be mindful not only of the culture, because this is a cultural issue, but also with regards to the fact that we're talking about victims and survivors of FGM.
I want to pick your legal mind now on a matter that is before the courts. Of course, we don't want to talk about merits or demerits, etc., but I can give you a chance now to sort of react to that case that was brought by Dr. Tatu Kamau, where, of course, we know the judge set a date, I believe, in February, when the matter will be brought, before the court. You may have had a chance to look at the case she presents vis-a-vis what, the other sides that have been enjoined in it have also presented. Do you want to just briefly comment on that without talking about merits or demerits? Go ahead.
To briefly comment on the case without necessarily going to the legalese or the nitty-gritties of the case is that this case has just actually put a spotlight on the work that we have been doing all these years, not only with regards to people who are doing the actual programming, the ones who are involved in prosecution, and also the ones who are coming up with strategies to ensure that we eradicate FGM. But it's a personal issue because we have come a long way, and we cannot belabor the strides and the efforts that we have had. So we will, ultimately we'll see the dynamics of the case as it unfolds in court. But just briefly to share, probably the issues coming out strongly would be the issue of consent. Adult women being able to consent to, being mutilated, and what in essence is consent with regards to saying, yes, I want to be cut. Why? Those are the kind of arguments that then the legal team and the legal think tanks will actually be advancing in court. And then the issue of medicalization, we're also seeing it coming up, also with regards to how the case is panning out and what we're seeing in the media. And I think also the media needs to be a little bit more sensitive because, public perception, how we're educating the media, that lay person, we also need to have at least legal minds and legal think tanks coming out and strongly being interviewed on issues that they actually need to tell the public that this is what is in court. This is actually, without necessarily touching directly to what will affect the case in court. Having medical practitioners come on board and the media highlighting what is medicalization, do we actually understand, why is it happening, and also ensuring that medical practitioners are on board, what is their stand on these issues and the issues that will slowly be panning out in court. In essence, my colleague Ismail was talking about medicalization and shifting of trends. We're seeing vacation cutting, we're seeing now medicalization, and you find that FGM is like a cell, it keeps on mutating. And the more forms. Exactly. So every day, every year, there's a different form. So we are seeing a lot of vacation cutting, and then we are seeing medicalization. Why? Those are the serious questions and discourse that we really need to put out there. Okay.
Exactly. Tony, there are people watching and thinking to themselves, this is something that needs to be dealt with, but the people in studio look competent enough. I don't know how I'm going to help. I don't know what I can do. What can people watching at home on a day like today do? What can they start thinking about?
As I said earlier, ending FGM is everyone's business. You don't need to come to TV to end FGM.
You don't need to be an expert with a tie and suit. And
so the little thing that you can do, if it's educating your family, educating your friends, talking about FGM wherever you go, in your social places, anything you do, in church, everywhere, that contributes to the fight against FGM. It's not one man thing. Ending FGM, no single country, no single region, religion, or continent can end FGM alone. We need to come together and ensure that we unite our forces towards ending FGM. So the little thing you do down there, even though no one sees whatever you're doing, even though you're talking just to your friend, just to your wife, just to your children, if you're a teacher, talking to the children in school, the pupils, if you are a pastor or a religious leader in your church, talking to your congregants, or if you're anything that you do, the little things that we do go a long way in ending FGM. So everyone can join the fight. You don't need to come to TV. You don't need to be online. Whatever you're doing down there in your community, it counts.
Makes a difference.
Yes.
Ismail, you can add your thoughts to that as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think we are looking at, first of all, with the devolution, how can we be able to take advantage of this new system of governance is that now there is, because we have to have effective partnerships and investments in FGM if we are to eliminate FGM by 2030. So this is calling out for county governments, especially where FGM prevalence is high, to allocate funding for addressing FGM and, of course, child marriage and other harmful cultural practices. And also looking at unlocking resources and commitments. I'm talking about political, and I'm going to focus on the theme for these years. It's ending FGM is a political decision. So we need MCAs at the county assemblies to draft even policies at that level that are going to streamline how FGM is addressed also at that level. Another issue is also how can we sparkle conversations and debate in terms of Religion, for instance, how do we engage religious leaders? How do we sparkle conversation among the youth? So the Girl Generation, for instance, we have a youth program, and of course we work closely with the UN Joint Program on Ending Female Genital Mutilation through cutting. The youth of today are the people who are going to end FGM, when we say in one generation. Because if they are empowered today and they say they won't cut their daughters, then I'm sure we will be breaking the cycle.
By
so
working
closely, yes, so working closely with young people, they are an integral part of society that we really need to work closely with for us to be able to make strides.
Okay, fair enough. Brenda, you're the lucky one to have the final word.
Yes.
What would you like Kenyans to think about, even as we wrap up the discussion?
As we wrap up, what I'd want to say is that our communities and the country as a whole needs to proactively protect our girls. That is my petition for today, because if you protect the girl today, you're protecting the society and the country tomorrow. I believe that goes a long way, and also ensuring that they join us in the campaign to ensure that we eradicate female genital mutilation in Kenya.
Okay, okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Noble initiative that all of you are engaged in. All the best as you head to KICD. It started at 10?
Yes.
Or should have started by then? Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you so much. And we certainly hope we'll have you back on to keep talking about this, because with the case in court, this then, and you're right, puts a spotlight and maybe gets Kenyans to start talking about something that many may have put on the back burners there. That is Tony Mwebia at the far right there, social worker and activist. Next to him, Ismail Omar, program officer at the Girl Generation. Of course, right next to me was Brenda Dora, who's an advocate and legal officer, the East African Center for Human Rights. Well, as we mentioned earlier, Miguna has been charged in a Kajiado court, even as the court in Milimani was expecting that he would be brought to the courts this morning at 9 o'clock, together with the Inspector General of Police, Joseph Boynet, and the Director of Criminal Investigation, George Kinoti. They did not appear, and Miguna, we have been informed by Nicholas Mutuku, who is the Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions, has informed the court in Milimani that Miguna was taken and charged in Kajiado. In addition, we are following a developing story out of Kisumu County, where riots have broken out, protests on the streets by citizens there who are unhappy with the news that Miguna has not yet been seen, so to speak, although of course we have been informed that he's been charged in a Kajiado court. So those are some of the pictures, again, we're trying to bring to you. We apologize for the quality of our picture at this moment, but that is what is happening. All right, on that note, you're watching Citizen Extra. We take a quick break. We'll be right back.